Hello, I'm Jon Wason. Today I have a photography lesson on f-stops. F-stop can be a very mysterious term, and some photographers are actually pretty good photographers, but they don't have a clear grasp on what is an f-stop. So today I'm going to try to explain about f-stops or apertures, and also how the f-stop and the shutter speed are related, and they're interlinked. And if you get a good understanding on this, we can really improve your photography skills. All right, the first thing that I want to talk about is the history of f-stops. Years ago, like in the 1800s, when scientists and lens manufacturers were trying to come up with a standard unit of the apertures or f-stops, they came up with a number called the f-stop. What is an f-stop? Well, an f-stop and an aperture are interchangeable terms. What's an aperture? An aperture is a hole. What's a hole? Well, when we're taking pictures with a film camera or a digital camera, what we're actually doing is recording light. You're recording light through a hole in your camera onto, in this case, there's a chip inside of this camera. So we need to get the light in through the hole. Now, on a nice camera, you can adjust your apertures. And the aperture numbers, years ago when they standardized the unit, they came up with f-stop numbers. F-stop numbers, let me list off a few: 2.8, 4.0, 5.6, F8, F11, F16, F22, F32, F64. Now think about those numbers. What was the biggest number I said? 64. Ooh, big number. You would think a big number means a big hole. Big number is a big aperture. Wrong. When you're thinking about apertures and f-stops, you have to think backwards. F64 is actually a tiny little hole, like a pinhole. And right now there's a lot of popularity of cameras that can shoot with f2.8. F2.8 is a 2.8 is a smaller number than f64, but actually 2.8 is a very large aperture. So let me just explain this very slightly to you. F8 is pretty much the normal, kind of like a middle. Actually, the human eye is about like f8. It's actually, I just read something the other day, f8.3. So if you set your camera at f8, you're going to get kind of a middle type of an aperture. If you go all the way down to, this one can go to f16, then you're going to get a smaller aperture. Now, why do you want to get these different apertures? Well, f64 was really popular with landscape photographers. If you ask the average guy in the street if he can name one famous photographer, most of them are going to come up with Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams was a famous photographer for his black and white. He used a huge view camera, which was like this big, and he looked it up mountains, and he used big plates of film, and he loved f64. He even was a founding member of the f64 club. Why did they like these small apertures? f64 is great because your depth of field is very sharp. Ansel Adams used to like take pictures of things that were sharp all the way from the front. Like I'm thinking of a mountain scene that in the front there's some big rocks and boulders, and those are clear, sharp focus. In the middle there's a river, and then further back is some fields. Way back there is some trees, and in the furthest part of the scene you're going to see mountains. And Ansel Adams would set his camera to f64, and he'd have it sharp, clear focus all the way from the beginning, the middle, and the foreground, the background. Everything was sharp. He loved that f64. Right now, wedding photographers are just loving the f2.8 lenses. They have to pay extra for them. They're kind of pricey, but why do they love those f2.8? Because they're getting a very selective focus. So say you're a wedding photographer, you got a nice portrait of the bride standing in front of a wedding chapel and lots of flowers. Well, what they do is set that camera to f2.8. There's the bride standing there beautiful. You can see the pores on her skin, you can see her eyelashes, and you can see her shiny lipstick, and that's just sharp as a tack, but go beyond and it's big blobs of light. And that is the bouquet, that 2.8 lens. People just love it. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit more concretely. I just told you that photography was recording light. So the demonstration that I have today is we're going to use salt to represent the light. And I'm going to use some pieces of foam core to represent your sensor in your camera or a sheet of film if you're a film photographer. So what I'm going to do is use two different salt containers here. Look at the large opening on this one. This is my f2.8 lens, and this other salt container I have pre-focused and preset to an f11. So just play along with me, the little imagination games today, and we're going to use this salt to represent light, and these openings, apertures or f-stops, are going to represent the lens. It's a little bit of common there, right guys? Okay, so I'm going to make a big mess all over with my salt, and let's move along. Okay, I prepared a little visual here to help you understand f-stops. What I have here are two lenses. Use your imagination here. These are not salt containers, these are lenses. And I have my lenses set. This one has been preset to f11. This lens has been preset to f2.8. This piece of black tagboard here is not a piece of paper. No, this is your camera. This is the inside of your camera. This is the chip that records the light. The light is the salt. So in this demonstration we have light and we have an aperture going through the lens, and I'm going to do my first picture. Here we are, we're taking a picture. We're going to open up the shutter and we're going to get the light onto our sensor, the chip inside of your camera. Ready for this? Here we go, taking a picture. Here we go, we're taking a picture. That was our first exposure. Whoop, a little bit more. All right, we have now taken a picture. Bing, beautiful. You have to clean your sensor sometimes. All right, now this is the photo. It has been exposed and we're good. That's our first one. Now we're going to take another photo. This is going to be with our other lens, and we're going to be using 2.8. Okay, here's our second camera, and our second lens. This lens has been set to 2.8, and this is our chip or sensor inside the camera, and we're going to take another picture. Here we go. We're going to push the shutter on our camera and take a picture at f2.8. There it is, kids. Now, if you remember the one I took previously at f11, it took a little bit longer for us to get the light onto our sensor. Now that is a great demonstration of the relationship of shutter speed and aperture. When we used f2.8, see how fast it went on? That's why sometimes people call an f2.8 a fast lens. It's fast because we got our light onto our sensor very fast. When we used the other one, the f11, it was a smaller aperture and it took a lot more time to get our light onto our sensor or our film if you're a film photographer. So that's why I wanted to use these containers of salt representing a lens and the lens aperture. And I hope that this lesson is going to stay with you, that actually there is a relationship of the time and the opening. So time is the shutter speed. Remember how fast this one emptied out? And the f-stop is how large is the opening in our lens. So today that's the conclusion of our lesson, and I'm glad that you tuned in with us today, and I hope that you'll be staying with us for more lessons in the future, because I have a lot of other topics that I want to cover concerning digital photography. And thank you very much for coming and tuning in today.